All right, welcome back to another Beast Game podcast. This is going to be a review for a Netflix show called Narcos, and it's season 2 for Narcos. It stars Wagner Moura, who plays Pablo Escobar. He's a Brazilian actor. He's known for the movie series called Elite Squad, and he has also been in an American movie called Elysium, which was utter garbage. Well, Keith, what was your view on Elysium?
Elysium, I thought that was a watchable movie that I ended up immediately forgetting about once I left the movie theater, and I had no reason to watch it again.
All right.
That movie gets a 6, and that's all I can remember about it.
I wouldn't even give it that much, but it also stars Boyd Holbrook, who plays DEA agent Steve Murphy. He's been in the Hatfield and McCoy TV miniseries that I believe was on History Channel. That was actually very good.
Yes, it was.
He's also been in Out of the Furnace with Christian Bale. That was terrible. He has also been in 2 Liam Neeson movies back to back, which were A Walk Among the Tombstones, which I liked, and Run All Night. And he's also been in Gone Girl. Lastly, it stars Pedro Pascal. He plays DEA agent Javier Pena. He mostly has a lot of TV acting credits. He's been in The Good Wife, Graceland, The Mentalist, but he's best known for his role in Game of Thrones, where he plays Oberyn Martell. And obviously Game of Thrones is a very widely heralded show. So
His character was extremely popular on Game of Thrones. Popular in the books, but his character, he was perfect as in that role.
and he had the best death sequence in Game of Thrones, because technically he won.
That was pretty fucking. that was pretty hardcore.
All right. The summary for this is a chronicle look at the criminal exploits of Colombian drug lord Pablo Escobar. And again, Pablo Escobar is played by Wagner Moura. Just preference that this is more or less a police drama, and it is not some historical biography. So it is a TV series in the sense that it is 10 episodes of the story of Agent Pena and Agent Murphy. So Keith, can you give me some thoughts on Narcos Season 2?
So Narcos season 2 continues after Pablo Escobar's escape from
His self-made prison.
himself. The prison he built for himself. It takes some liberties with historical facts to make it more dramatic for television and everything.
It takes a lot of liberties according to what you might see on History Channel or some other Pablo Escobar biography.
In the same vein, it does a good job of showing what that time was like. Pablo Escobar was a very loving husband and father. At the same time, he's a ruthless, power-mad
Drug dealer.
figure, drug dealer, and not just a drug dealer. He was the kingpin. He was the guy who the drugs came from him. He was the one who started it all.
Yeah.
Got it all together. When you ever watched Miami Vice, probably back in the '80s, it was Pablo Escobar's drugs that they were talking about, and
Yeah, he was
it
responsible for the majority of the cocaine that came into most countries during the 80s and early 90s.
So Narcos season 2 picks up pretty well from right at the end of the first season. Almost it takes place immediately after the end of the first season, with Pablo escaping and getting and making his way out of the prison. He doesn't come back on top. He ends up a hunted man trying to retain his empire. His main enemies aren't just the DEA, so it's not just
Pena and Murphy.
DEA, just Steve Murphy, Murphy and Pena. He's against the Cali cartel.
Yeah, so there's other
And also
smaller
the
cartels
wife
that-
of the man he killed, who used to work for him, and his cartel, who's out for revenge. I think her name was
Moncada.
Judy Moncada. And it's some new players, this anti-communist private military organization.
which is based on a true group.
Yeah, was it the Castagna brothers, I think?
What are just your general thoughts about the second season?
The first season was so good that the second season had a lot to live up to. I kind of looked at the second season, it's just a continuation of the first season. So it wasn't so much that they changed up the tone. Normally when you get a second season to a TV series, a popular one, and one that did very well, they tried to up the ante and one up the tone of it and everything. In this case, it felt like this is a continuation of it all, not just a second season to this with new threats, new enemies, and new things to do. It was just a continuation of the original story. I rate it about at the same level I would rate the first season because of that, and kind of look at it as a whole. I mean, I thought the second season was good. It did drag on in a few areas and parts, namely towards the end of it. There was a lot of, I don't say metaphysical stuff, but it was just basically a lot of kind of this soul searching that that Pablo seemed to be doing when he's lost just about everything.
Let me just kind of jump in for a second. I felt that it started off strong, mainly because I like police procedurals and political dramas, courtroom dramas. Like, those are some of my favorite TV shows. I also felt that everything up until episode 8 was great, and it was up there with the last season. Towards the end, I felt that episodes 9 and 10 just kind of dragged on. They could have just been one episode. It could have been a 8-episode season. Since the last one was 10 episodes, they just kind of kept that format. But go ahead.
I kind of have to agree in that regard. They added the additional characters, and the new characters actually fit. It wasn't that they were just adding more people to the show just to kind of add to the show. These were people who historically were part of the cartel and part of the story. But at the same time, it showed a more complete picture of Pablo Escobar, which is why I say it is a continuation. They didn't romanticize that man in any way, I felt.
And then on top of that, people feel that it's redundant because I believe in Colombia there was already a TV miniseries that was about Pablo Escobar. And then there was a movie with Josh Hutcherson slightly about Pablo Escobar.
Benicio del Toro.
James, you are correct. Benicio del Toro was Pablo Escobar, that movie with Josh Hutcherson. So it's called Escobar Paradise Lost, but it was barely about Pablo Escobar. But Josh Hutcherson's character eventually got good in with the family. He was a Canadian that fell in love with Pablo Escobar's niece and then got brought into the business, but wasn't cut out for it. Go ahead, Keith.
My thoughts on the second season were that it was, of course, necessary. I thought it was as good as the first one, and I agree with you. It did drag on towards the end. It was showcasing more of a deconstruction of the character. Like, basically,
they try to humanize him a little bit. That he started out wanting to have political aspirations and wanted to do good, but he still was also a drug dealer. And the arc of last season just kind of showed how ruthless he was. But this season tries to go back to he cares about his family.
The biggest thing about him was that he cared about his family, but behind that, it was all about the power he'd attained. I mean, the guy was complete power mad at the end. I mean, he had his priorities set. That was to take care of his family, making sure that they were all well and set. That scene, what did you think of that scene when they attacked the house after following his mother home?
So I had that highlighted for me. Well, that's up there for me with True Detective Season 1, Episode 5, yes, where there is a very, very long single camera shot. So that no longer is a big selling point sometimes because people tend to overuse that. But how it was used in True Detective and this show, it is a gunfight with a single camera shot that is inside the house, outside the house, inside of a car, and it is amazing.
Flat out fantastic, and I love it when it is used to show off a director and a cinematographer, and basically to show off the production team's technical prowess.
And that was episode 6, by the way.
Freaking amazing! It was frantic. It kept the pace up. So after they escaped from the house, after they're all shell shocked by what happened, there's a moment when Pablo Escobar's daughter asks him if we've moved away, how's Santa going to find us? At that point, Wagner Moura, he kind of sold it. I mean, the guy's voice broke. You knew that the man loved his family and that everything he was doing was not just for him. His success was predicated on his family's happiness. To watch him go through this entire season just kind of like going to happen. You knew that it was going to go down, that he kind of just went further and further down. Like his business was taken over by the Cali cartel. His main source of income, which is money from America, that they just basically hijacked that and took it over. He had nothing left. He still had plenty of money left around. He had plenty of people he can call and everything. But his desperation at the end, it's just kind of like the guy was just deconstructed. He was just basically broken down to his component parts. But he was finally stopped. But he was still Pablo Escobar. He was still this ruthless killer, who would kill anything just to get his way. When he was trying to get his family out of Colombia, he basically threatened the whole world. If you don't let him out and keep my family safe, I'm going to kill everybody. And they balance it well with just showing like man and the monster and stuff. So
a quick question. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Quick question. I mean, I have not seen the series, but do you think they may have kind of romanticized that lifestyle?
Not really, because they show the negative aspects. There are people that show up dead in the middle of a street where it is in the town square because he tried to send home a point. So it's not
Yeah.
romanticized. It is not exactly how it may have happened in real life, but they don't necessarily glorify him as if this was his movie. I mean, this is called Narcos, so it is more about the DEA agents aspect of, hey, this is what we're trying to do to capture Pablo Escobar. So with that, there's a lot of backstabbing, double crossing, and outmaneuvering on their parts that they go above and beyond what would be necessary to capture him. So when I say above and beyond, I'm talking about morally above and beyond, legally above and beyond. So
the president basically held his family hostage and kept them in Colombia just so Pablo Escobar would
could
be
come out of
nervous enough
hiding.
and so that Pablo Escobar would just break down and try to and do something stupid. And he basically ordered the man killed.
Yeah, and more ways than one. So we were talking about that third faction. So you have the DA agents, the other cartels, and then kind of this offshoot paramilitary group that eventually becomes the integral part of the story. That president of Colombia, his name is Guevara at the time, he just flat out said, I'm not going to comment on this, but if they kill him, they kill him. Pablo Escobar is more of a nuisance to us than anything else. If this group kills him, if it's the other cartels, if it's the DEA, as long as somebody kills him, I'm fine with that. And if I have to do something that I don't necessarily want to do, I'll let it happen. Let me just kind of make a couple of points, and then we'll just talk about the three main characters and then kind of wrap it up. A couple other things that I kind of highlighted, that Messina, who becomes a boss of Pena Murphy because they were just kind of running wild by themselves the first season, that they get a bureaucratic boss. Kind of felt that her role, even though this might be based on real life, was kind of pointless. The next thing is that there's another aspect with the CIA, and the CIA working with the paramilitary group, so they're funding them with guns and other ammunition. The CIA Bill character was necessary. There's a chief justice in Colombia that is not necessarily on the side of the government. He's on the side of Pablo Escobar at a certain point because he wants an ulterior motive. He backstabs the president of Colombia several times, and he was a pretty good character. The increased focus on his wife is called Tata in the show, as it dragged on from the later episodes, was just annoying, but it had to focus on her because they start using the family as a pawn in order to drag him out or give himself up. Richard T. Jones. You know who Richard T. Jones is, James, don't you?
He wasn't even the best man.
Yeah, so he was in the first season. He was pretty integral in the first season.
The Wood or something like that.
Yeah, he was in a lot of those movies, but he shows up in the second season for one episode in a non-speaking role.
Just to walk by the camera.
Yeah,
that's what he did.
Yeah, he showed up at a meeting and then just walked off.
At this point, it become pretty saturated, despite the fact that a lot of characters got killed off. It was becoming pretty saturated. And in this case,
what was his role in the first season?
He was also a part of the DA or part of the government trying to capture Pablo Escobar. So he was on their side, but I forgot what happened to his character towards the end. But it was just funny. But the last point I just want to make: my favorite characters in the show were Guevara, Chico, Berna, and La Kika. Those characters were probably the best characters in season 2. So let's go ahead and talk about Wagner Moura as Escobar, and how do you think his acting was?
He sold it. Pablo Escobar was a villain, but at the same time, he was a villain you could understand in terms of the man wasn't out for power just to have power. He wanted everything he wanted as a child, and when he got it, he wasn't going to let it go. So he played the character like that, and he played him as a loving father, because every time you saw him with his kids, every time, if you notice in this season, he spent more time with his family than running around doing narco shit.
Yeah.
When he was with his family, he was focused, and he was loving father and husband, loyal son, and he was basically doing all that. And then when he goes to stays on the farm with his father just breaks him down and just says, "I'm ashamed of you, you're a piece of shit." He kind of hit him, but at the same time, he was like, "Well, I got stuff to do. This is the way I did it. This is my life, and I want it back. I want everything back the way I had it." So he played him perfectly as it was. It might not have been exactly the same as what it might not have been Pablo Escobar as he was. He kind of walk around and adjust his pants and kind of out of shape drug dealer, and you knew he was sick. He wasn't feeling well. That the character wasn't feeling well or wasn't doing well physically. Episodes before he actually had the medical emergency that occurred to him.
All right.
You can kind of see him just like the stress building up. So he played that character up brilliantly. I mean, that guy's a great actor. So he played Pablo Escobar, and I know some Spanish speaking folks don't like him because
He's Brazilian,
he speaks with a Brazilian accent,
and that the Colombian accent is very particular among
right
Spanish speaking countries. So it is similar to how you would have a English actor play a Southern American, and you can tell that there's a slight accent in that. So regardless of if he's speaking Spanish, he is still speaking with a Brazilian accent. Let me just go ahead and then mention a couple of things. I thought he did an admirable job, the same level that he had done last season. The big thing for me, again, was the family aspect, that it worked in this, but as the season went on, the focus on him and kind of his introspection into himself, that now he's just sad and depressed, and that the weight of the situation is coming down on him. He did a good job with that. It's just the later episodes that I felt that his acting wasn't as strong as it was earlier in the season. So let's go and talk about Steve Holbrook, who plays Agent Murphy. And he is generally the narrator of most scenes in the series. So what was your view on Agent Murphy?
I consider season 1 and 2 just one long season. Overall, he did well. Not sure how the real Agent Murphy was like, but there was this camaraderie he had with Pena that felt natural.
Yeah.
Felt like totally that they were like two of them would have each other's backs, but at the same time, they clearly each had their own agenda and they weren't just in each other's shit. So it wasn't your typical buddy cop thing where it would be like, I'm into something. It's like, well, buddy, I got to join you. It's kind of like he was going on his own road to do things. He was going through his own shit in his life, and he played that pretty well. It was kind of odd that he would be in a Spanish-speaking country and not picked up any Spanish.
Yeah, that
I
was
can't believe that the actual
that is a valid criticism, that he has been there at least for a year to maybe 5 years. Just
for sure, it's like close to 5 years. I was looking at things more than that. He was there for a while. He should have picked up Spanish.
And he's just like, even in later episodes, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, someone has to speak English to him in order for him to understand what has happened. Let me just go ahead and say that even though I didn't pick him as my favorite character, I still think that he is the strongest character, and that he also maintained his values throughout the whole entire season. So again, this is filled with a lot of backstabbing and trying to manipulate people, but he tries to do it the right way. And other than some of the issues with his wife that pop up towards the middle of the season, I still think that Steve Holbrook did a very good job. But what were you about to say, Keith?
I disagree. I think he did compromise. He compromised just as much as everybody else did, in fact, because he was
not as much as Pena.
It up, but he wasn't there to take down Pablo Escobar. He was there to have the guy either dead or destroyed to the point where he was useless, and then like let the cartels kill him. And you saw that from the first season as well. On the very first episode, there's a scene when he gets a call, of the first season, and he gets a call, and he's on the phone with Pena, and he goes through, and he's snapping photos of the dead narcos, and they're just kind of like, oh, good, we got him. Oh, he's dead too, cool. And oh, fantastic, he's dead too. And then in the second season, he jumps in a helicopter and decides to go full in with God, what was that character's name? Carrillo
Carrillo.
and Carrillo, and he interrogating somebody and he killed him.
Yeah, he pushed him out of the helicopter. But James, did you want to
Not just one
interject
person,
something?
several people. But yeah, go ahead.
My question is this: have y'all seen the movie Blow?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Blow is from the perspective of Johnny Depp, that it is a uncompromising, ruthless view of the situation. But I like Blow. That's a good movie. I actually own it.
I think I only saw parts of it.
All right. And Keith, let's go ahead and wrap up the character talk with Pena, who was played by Pedro Pascal.
Pena was my favorite. He was done with Pablo Escobar. He wanted him stopped any way possible, and that was dead or in jail. But after the first season, when he saw that the man built his own prison and the Colombian government let him do that, this guy's got to go. This guy's got to get dropped. He needs to go. And the way he compromised, and you saw that when he did, and how he compromised himself by involving himself with other narcos to take down Pablo Escobar. It's kind of like you almost saw him being deconstructed the same way Pablo Escobar was. And then, of course, in the last episode, and kind of the last scene, you saw that wasn't the case at all. And it was something else going on.
Yeah, there's
And-
always like a bigger picture other
Exactly.
than, hey, Pablo Escobar is today's threat.
Yeah.
But Pedro Pascal was on par with last season, and I think he had slightly more scenes than last season just because he comes integral to the
Pepe's.
the backstabbing that needs to happen between the other cartel, the Los Pepes, which is the paramilitary group that I think it stands for People Executed by Pablo Escobar, that is based on the real group. And then just even internally with the Colombian police, that he has people inside the Colombian police that also kind of share his interests, maybe not directly, but they also will be integral into the backstabbing. So, well, let's go ahead and just wrap this up.
I felt this was a continuation of the whole thing. So I'll look at this as one big series, one 20 episode season about this. And I thought it was extremely well done. I understand that there were some definite changes made, for dramatic purposes to make it, viewable.
Yeah, some
television.
characters' names are changed. Some characters are split off into two characters. Some other are written out of the show entirely. But go ahead.
I like the procedural portions of it, and I found that no one was made the shining hero in any of this. Everyone had dirt on them, especially Pablo Escobar. But at the same time, they all had their light. They were all human. They all had goals and ideas and stuff they want to get ahead with. And the second season was a fitting in from what the first season brought out. And I was glad for that last scene at the end. It's kind of like going to look like it was about to end on this sour note where, because again, Pena was like my favorite character after this. They validated everything he did. It's kind of like, you were right. Now we're going to focus on this. And because you were on that, it looks like you're going to be on point to take on the other threats that are occurring. So I'm excited for the next seasons. I like to see where it goes from there.
Which is why it's called Narcos and not Pablo Escobar. I felt that everything up till episode 8 was the show that I wanted, but the last two episodes, which could have just been one episode entirely, just kind of dragged on. So in regards to last season, where I might rate that about an 8.5, just due to those last two episodes, I would knock it down a half point just because it got very boring. That eventually I just was like, well, this episode is, it's okay. I was like, all right, well, maybe they'll wrap it up in episode 10. And then half of the episode is still this introspective look into the last days of Pablo Escobar. I still like it. I'm looking forward to season 3. And hopefully, I'm not sure if Holbrook is still a part of that, but it looks like Pena will be a focusable character in that next season. What score would you give Narcos season 2?
I'll give it an 8.5.
Okay.
That's based against other Netflix shows.
All right. So for me, as I mentioned, I felt that season 1 was a stronger season, even with maybe the first 2 episodes of season 1 were pretty slow because obviously it's setting up things, but it ramps up from there. Season 2, again, I had some issues with the last 2 episodes. Episode 6 is still the shining winner for me, which is the gun battle sequence. And also just a lot of the backstabbing. So you have the Chief Justice, I believe. Yeah, I think it might be the Chief Justice or Attorney General for Colombia. Since I like a lot of courtroom dramas and things like that, like his way of manipulating law in order to try to bring down Pablo Escobar, as opposed to the way that the president wanted it, was also something that was strong. But for me, I would give this an 8. Like I said, I would give season 1 an 8.5. This season, because of those last 2 episodes, loses a half point just because of how boring they were to me. So we're going to wrap this up. This is the Beast Gang Podcast. You can find more of our podcasts at beastgang.com, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and YouTube.